Pastor Summerfield. How
Yes,
are
sir.
you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you having me on this interview, man.
Absolutely, man.
Yes,
How
sir.
was your trip here?
My trip was great, man. I'm one of those guys that go to sleep on a plane.
Okay.
So as soon as the plane takes off, man, that door shuts. Matter of fact, I am knocked out, going to sleep, man.
So you're originally from Raleigh. Is that
I'm
where you
originally
right
from
now?
Raleigh, North Carolina. Absolutely.
All right. So let's start off a little bit about how you grew up. And
I grew up in a household, man. My father and my mother were married at an early age. My dad married my mother. He was 26. My mother was 19, and they got married. And from there, they had one son, who has my dad's namesake. And we grew up I was born second, and we grew up in a great household. Then my sister was born, and then we all just grew up in a small rural area called Garner, North Carolina. And my father, he was a city official, and he was working for city government for a long period of time. And he retired to become a pastor. He started his church in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we started it actually in my parents' home, and nobody showed up. So from there, it was just my siblings and my grandmother, and we all would come on Sundays and have church right in that living room. And then I had to become the choir director, and my oldest brother, we were all in the choir. So it was just, we were performing for each other. Really, it was no church members. And then it grew after a certain amount of time, and we bought our first building. And after buying that first building, we outgrew that building and then moved to another building, and outgrew that building. And then we moved to where we are right now. And my parents, 38 years later, my parents passed away in 2017, 2 months apart from each other, one in July, one in September. And so they passed the mantle to me. So that's kind of like the summarized version.
now you say you guys started off in a small church. That's interesting because yesterday I was out in Douglasville, west of here.
I know where that's at.
And the place where I get a friend of mine works out there in a plaza.
Got it.
And she has, right next door, there's a church.
Okay.
And it seems as if the lady, they said that she's in there by herself a lot. So she has a church, and sometimes I don't see too many cars.
Sure.
But I hear her in there, preaching.
Sure.
So she may have a few people in there, I don't know. But
Yep.
Can you kind of explain how that works? You starting off small.
Yeah.
And it's like you still have to get the word out.
You start out small, and I remember when my father decided to do it in a small storefront building, which is probably what you're describing. And it was a small storefront building right next to a famous gospel radio station. And we found this building. My dad found this building that was available right next to the radio station. And the way that he orchestrated, I remember the way he orchestrated starting getting the word out was he went next door to talk to the radio station owner and asked him if he paid him the rent, if he paid him a little more than the rent, would he give him a spot on the radio station? So he said, okay. He gave him a 30-minute spot to go in there and preach the word. And prior to that, we might have had maybe 10 members coming at the time, which is why he had to move it from his house. And so he went on a radio station twice a week, and that's how he got the word out. And now people started trying to find out, who is this man on there talking about the Bible? And they needed to hear him, and they wanted to find him. So that's how he started packing out his church. And we went from 10 members or 10 people coming to over 75 people coming in a matter of 6 months. And then we outgrew that building. And but he would go in there, he would preach in that building to those 5 to 10 members as if he was preaching to 5,000. He gave his all. He was faithful. He was consistent. He even retired from his civil service. He retired from his the job that he was making six figures at that time, which was unheard of in 1988. But he retired from that job to make nothing from the church that he was founding and starting. So he started with a vision and started with something, and he totally focused on it. And then he strategized about how he was going to get people to hear his word. And I thought that was the most genius thing, to go and sit down with that radio station owner and ask for time on his station. And that's how he got his word out. But he preached to the same 5 every week, like he was preaching to 5,000. It was unbelievable.
Right. And that, that philosophy works for a little bit of everything. Like even when they talk about artists and music,
absolutely.
If you got a crowd of 5,
sure,
rock it like it was.
You got to. Even if the microphones don't work, if the sound system doesn't work, if nobody shows up and it's just you and your road manager and y'all standing in there, hey, perform no matter what, because at the end of the day, if God's put something inside of you, then you've got to fulfill it. He wants to see what you will handle and how you will handle in the small beginnings. There's a scripture that says, despise not small beginnings, because it's going to start one place, but God already sees it, at a bigger thing, in a bigger pace, and a bigger rate. And if you can't respect it at the small scale, then he can't trust you to respect it with, you got thousands of people coming.
Absolutely.
I think that we have to respect our beginnings and stay true to our beginnings. And there's nothing wrong with growth, but I think my father, he stayed humble, and I think people have to remember to do that as well.
Right. So where did mental health and all of that come in? Because that's a very big topic nowadays. Yes. I think it's starting to be more accepted within our community.
Yes.
But you've been doing it for a while.
Absolutely.
How did that come about?
Came about because I had a sister, half sister. Before my father met my mother, he had a daughter previous to my mother. And that daughter that he had, which was our half sister, she was diagnosed bipolar schizophrenia. And my father's brother was diagnosed bipolar schizophrenic as well. And that day and time, they didn't know how to cope with it. They didn't know how to deal with it. It was in the early 70s, and just not understanding what they should do, what kind of treatment they should use for it. Doctors weren't there were not a slew of mental health, physicians that could help manage it. And the medications during that time weren't as advanced as they are now. So at a certain age, I realized, and I was born with dyslexia myself, which is more of a developmental delay, but I had always had a connection to people who were born with things that they had no control over. And when you have gone through traumatic things, or you've gone through situations that could cause grief, I had always been connected to people with pain. I don't know why. I just always have been connected with people who are less fortunate, who have no control over the situations that they have been put in, abandonment issues, all kinds of things that I've had to encounter growing up. And from that point on, once me and some partners of mine were in college, and we just sat around and started talking about our passions and our love for helping people. And so we developed a curriculum, and that curriculum shortly advanced into opening our first group home. And then we moved from having a 4-bed group home to now having outpatient offices all around North Carolina. And thousands of clients later, we realized that was our true calling. And now moving and transitioning into the role of a senior pastor, I'm encountering people who are battling with so many issues, and they have no idea how to manage them. And so I'm able to use that acumen as far as mental health. I'm able to use that acumen into my ministry and the psychology of helping people.
Right. Now, when you're talking about things like PTSD,
yes,
things of that nature, I'm from a military family.
Yes.
So a lot of people,
absolutely,
I just heard of yesterday, a former, student that
yes,
went to my high school.
Yes.
He committed suicide.
Yep.
Now, I didn't know him personally, I talked to him a few times, but he wasn't like a friend.
Yes.
But anytime that you hear that, he served some time
Sure.
in the military, just like a lot of my friends
Absolutely.
did. They kind of passed that down
Yeah.
amongst the family. So, that type of PTSD with people going to the war.
Yes.
When I graduated high school, everybody was getting sent over. That was right, 9/11.
Absolutely.
All of that
They
happened
needed
during that
people.
time. Absolutely. So that type of PTSD is that similar to what our people go through in some of the ghettos of America?
Yes. So PTSD is PTSD. I believe that PSD left unattended, or if you don't pay attention to it, it could fester and grow into something a little bit more massive. People who people who commit suicide are suffering from some form of PTSD. Okay, in some cases, I was just talking to a member who I check on from time to time, and one of the things that he was talking to me about was how he has struggled with PTSD. He was in the military, and him being in the military, he was in combat. He jumped out of planes. He actually shot people and killed people. He was a for real trooper, and he was talking about how he coming to church is his lifeline. I think that people who are struggling with PTSD, I don't think that they should play around with it. That is a serious thing. And I believe that in the church, it was taboo to go talk to a therapist, talk to a counselor, all of the above. I feel as though in this day and age, statistics prove that 46.4% of the adults in the United States will experience a mental illness. That's almost half of the population in the United States that will, as an adult, will experience mental illness in the lifetime. That's ADHD, that's OCD, that's ADHD, ADD, that's ODD, that's PTSD. There's so many different levels of mental illness. So you cannot avoid the signs of it. And I think that at some point in time, you may have to talk to a mental health physician that can help you cope and help you manage with it, because that is a serious thing. And PTSD is serious. It is extremely serious.
Absolutely. So how do you know the difference between sadness and grief, and depression?
Um, I was thinking about it, and clients, I've over the years seen different clients and seeing different parishioners in the church. There's certain practical signs that I have studied and realized could be an issue. Um, there's some magazines that talk about or some readings that solidify there's about 15 different signs. Some people say there's 10 different signs. One of the signs is fatigue, extreme fatigue, having to sleep. Most people, when they are going through issues, when they're going and they're depressed and they have had a loss, or they're grieving the loss of a job, or they're grieving the loss of a spouse, or they're going through issues, their spouse may have left them, they're going through an ugly divorce. Most people have a tendency to either overeat, not eat at all, sleep all day, sleep all night, become withdrawn. Those are specific signs that a person could be going through mental illnesses.
Oh wow. I interviewed a rapper a couple years ago who the very first thing he said to me was, "I suffer from depression," and this was during a time where a lot of people weren't coming
Talking
out
about it.
Yes,
Yeah.
and he's had some things happen, over the years. He's been through some things,
Sure.
but he's really brought that to the forefront and talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah.
How do you go about, like, how do you break out of that?
So I think there's a couple different ways. I think there's 4 practical ways that I try to use for myself. I've experienced loss early on. Um, I don't have children yet, and one of the things that I have been challenged with is children. I've lost 5 children, so I've buried one and lost the other 4. and the opportunity to produce and have a son or a daughter, I've struggled with that, and even to the degree of feeling like something may be, potentially wrong with me physically or whatever the case may be. And I've battled with that because I'm looking at all my friends, my sister, my brother. I'm looking at everybody around me have children and being able to have life running around their house and pouring into and raising. That's enough to make someone, experience a certain amount of depression anyway. Then on top of that, after 38 years of being close with my family, we ran the business together. We went on vacations together. In some cases, we all lived together. My family was impacted by losing not just one of my parents, but losing both of my parents within a 53-day period of time. So to have them stripped away from me at an early age, is enough to make you. And then I've got to take over the company and run the ministry and preach to people and pour into people that are grieving just like me. My parents were the pastors for over 30 years of that church. They groomed and raised people. So now I have to now take over these people and pour into these people every week. And I'm saying that to say, I believe that every person of faith ends up having to have their faith challenged through life. Most people who are of the faith or of faith are the ones that suffer the most in their own personal lives. Because I believe that at the end of the day, this conversation could be able to touch somebody right where they are. And my transparency should be able to help someone be able to deal with their loss. So I want to start it there because I want to make sure it's clear. Because I'm a pastor doesn't mean I have it all together. I've experienced loss. I've experienced abandonment. My parents could not show up at every football game and basketball game and support me in all my endeavors. And they couldn't be there because they were building a ministry. They were preaching and teaching to thousands and raising people and covering people. And they were in the hospitals praying for people when I was playing football games and basketball games and in college and high school. So they couldn't support. So I experienced different levels of abandonment, which could make you depressed because when everybody else's parents are showing up for their games and I got to walk off the field after scoring several touchdowns and, my biggest games of the year, and they're not there to celebrate me. And I got to meet them at home hours later after they poured into every other person. And I've had to get the back end or so I've gone through things in my life that have put me in a place where I could be depressed and stressed. Now, how I deal with these things, a couple different ways. First of all, I have to remain hopeful. I have to remain that it's going to get better. From 1 second to the next, from 1 minute to the next, from 1 hour to the next, from 1 month to the next. I've got to remain hopeful that it can change. Okay. Number two, I think that we've got to check our circles. Some of us become inundated with our circle that is doing nothing but putting more negativity in. They say that, birds of a feather flock together. We have a tendency to connect with people who are grieving also. And so those grief counterparts kind of are going to feed your grief. You have to sometimes now put yourselves, and there's nothing wrong with talking to family members who are grieving as well. But at some point in time, it's got to click that I need a little bit more energy, a different type of energy. Biggie said it best, you got to go from negative to positive. And I think that at some point in time, you've got to put people around you in your circle that can speak positivity in you. If you're laying around sleeping all day, I want somebody to come turn the lights on in my house, wake me up, open the blinds, wipe my face, help me wash my tears away and say, hey, listen, we got to get moving. Let's run to the store. Let's go get you some food. Let me help you get dressed. Do whatever you got to do. Fix your wig. Do whatever you got to do to get yourself from being negative and doing positive things that can help change the outcome and kind of help your hope. So you got to check your circle. Make sure you got people around you that can speak positivity into you. Other thing is celebrate the small wins. Stop and smell the roses. If something good did happen, Celebrate that. I don't care how small it is. I don't care how big it is. Stop and celebrate it. It can help change the trajectory, of your thought process and thinking that there's nothing more for you. I don't have anything else, nothing else. Something good is happening. He woke you up this morning. He got clothes on your back. If you look out there, you got gas in the car. You may not have the best car that you want. You may not have that Maybach you want, but you got a Toyota Tercel. You got a Toyota Corolla, and you can get from point A to point B. Be thankful and celebrate the small wins. I think the last thing is physical fitness. You got to do something. Walk a mile, walk 100 yards. Do something that could create endorphins that would help create energy in you, because I believe that sometimes we sit around and we just, become consumed with our problems and our thinking, that we don't do something that creates motion and energy, and those things are what help us get moving. And I believe that those are 4 practical ways that we can help combat and manage mental illness, mental wellness as a whole.
Right. Now, I've talked to some of my friends over the years, because as we've gotten older,
yes,
a lot of people, they've lost their parents.
Yes.
And for me, I haven't lost any parents yet. Good. I think even my great grandmother,
wow,
she's still around. She's 94.
Wow.
And I super dread those days.
Yeah.
It's like, one of my friends lost his mother, and he had to watch that happen. And I'm kind of like, okay, how am I going to handle it once that day comes? And it's especially my grandmother.
It's interesting because I was with my parents. I watched them transition, both of them. My father, I watched them transition in the hospital. They both lost to the bout of cancer, 2 different types of cancer. My mother's mother lived till she was 100, and she lived with them up until the time she passed. My father's mother passed away at 86, and she passed away in 2004. And we watched her transition as well. And my father's father transitioned after my father passed. My father's father transitioned in 2018. My mother's father transitioned when my mother was 16 years old, and I didn't have a relationship with my mother's father. But everybody else I have relationship with, they're all gone. So I have no parental. I have an uncle, and I have 2 aunts alive.
And see, that's what that was going to be my next question.
Like, that's it.
Having that type of presence in your life, like, that's a big blow.
It's a huge blow. And when I look around and I see and I check my surroundings, I'm constantly reminded I don't have my parental figures here, and I've been left with even less than the average person, because I don't also have children that I can pour into. So it's like a gap on both sides. So I'm like left, it's like I'm just a sandwich meat. I don't have no bread, I don't have no dressing, I don't have nothing. It's just me. But I have my siblings, I have my brothers and my sister, who we constantly, and I've got nieces and nephews. I would say for you, at the end of the day, spend as much time with your parental figures as you can. I think that a lot of people die, they experience loss of their parents, but it's painful for them because they are letting their parents die, and they are regretting that they didn't spend enough time. Conversations, if they live far away, talk to them every day. Enjoy the moments, record conversations, record everything you can with your family, because you want them, the transition could possibly happen before God comes back. So preparing your mind for the possibility of that, but let's do it without regretting that you didn't spend enough time with them. It's painful enough to lose them. It's even worse when you regret that you haven't spent. My parents transitioned without me feeling regretful, because we spent a lot of time together. Not just in the hospital. I'm talking about we worked together, we played together, we vacationed together. We made sure of that We had times where we spent days, weeks. It's been amazing 38 years. I'm 40 years old now, but I had an amazing 38 years with my family. And I think all of my family, my siblings, feel like we didn't have any regrets, from our grandmothers to our grandfather. We didn't have any regrets. And I think that that's the biggest thing I would say to anybody who has not lost their parents and their grandparents. You're in a blessed position. And I just want to encourage you to spend as much time, conversations, talk to them. I don't care what the conversations are about, because my grandmother, after 83, from 83, 84 to 100, we couldn't get the best years because she began to battle with dementia. And so the memories weren't always there. However, we were able to still spend time physically. And I would say definitely, any practical advice I can give you, gravitate to the amount of time that you spend with them, because at the end of the day, it is very short for that age bracket. And there's not a lot of them walking around. They're like dinosaurs. They're not a lot of them walking around just living and experiencing life to the fullest. My family is extremely devastated, and was devastated when we lost my parents. However, we were all not regretful. We were, and much gratitude for the time that we had, because we took advantage of the time that we had with them. And we're thankful for that.
Gotcha. My great grandmother, she has dementia right now as well, and my grandmother is actually taking care of her. Wow. One thing that I call them like every 3 days.
Sure. Good.
On the dot.
That's good.
That's good. I've been living in Atlanta since February of this year.
Okay.
So
that's a big move.
Yeah.
From Indianapolis to Atlanta. Wow.
Yeah, we traveled back and forth here for about 10 years.
Okay.
And I just got tired of making a drive.
Yeah. How long is that drive?
8 hours.
8 hours.
Okay. And I don't have any children as well.
Wow.
I'm 35.
Got it.
So I said, let me get on down here and make it happen.
Yep.
And that's where we at.
That's where you at.
So we're talking about expansion.
Sure.
Expanding your ministry.
Yes. So my father always had a vision to impact his community in a major way. He wanted to help the ones that could not help themselves. He wanted to provide housing. He wanted to provide group homes for young mothers, and he wanted to do several things for the senior living. And I wanted to complete that vision. So we bought 127 acres of land, and we developed some houses on 51 of those acres. And then we built the church, and we built the Christian Academy, and a daycare, a preschool on 12 of those acres. So we have 75 acres left that we need to develop. And so God has put me in a position to now solidify the legacy of my parents and the great works that they started. And we are expanding to a senior living facility now. We're getting ready to build a couple hundred new homes. We're getting ready to do workforce development. We're going to do some retail. We're going to provide some mental and physical health, medical care for that community, primarily for Black men. We're really focusing on our African-American men. They don't have enough specialty care for them, and we want to make sure that our men are taken care of. So we're losing so many Black men to prostate cancer. We're losing them to so many different things like colon cancer. And I want to make sure that we're providing the best level of care for our African-American males and our African-American women as well. But there's just so much more available for women. And I want men to feel comfortable to be able to come receive health care in one place and get it, and boom, there it is. So we're embarking upon November 1st through the 3rd is our Legacy Weekend. That's where we're going to basically announce what all that we're working on. And this Legacy Ball is going to be extremely epic. We are doing a Legacy Ball on November 1st, and that Legacy Ball is a black tie gala. We're going to raise awareness, at the same time raise money for our school, because we want to expand our school some more. And we're also going to take a portion of those proceeds and donate it to cancer research in honor of my parents for losing to the battle of cancer. There's so many people battling with cancer we wanted to donate to that research sector. And then we have John Wall, who graduated from our school, who was in the NBA. He was the #1 draft pick, and he graduated from our Christian Academy. And he is now doing great things for the Washington Wizards. And we're going to retire his jersey on the 2nd of November. And then we're going to culminate this thing on November the 3rd at church on that Sunday. And that's where we're going to roll out the legacy. And we wanted to invite everybody from our community that have gone on to bigger and greater things. I've got a lot of members that have moved to Alabama, Tennessee, Atlanta, people who have gone on to do bigger and better things that are all going to come back on that homecoming weekend and celebrate with us as we solidify the legacy weekend. So we're moving and making some moves for the city. The mayor is going to be there. The governor is going to be there. Lieutenant governor is going to be there. All political parties, Republicans, Independent, Democrats, they're all going to be there to help celebrate the legacy that my parents started. And we're going to continue this thing. And I've been petitioned to run with the baton. They passed it to me, and I'm going to run with it and carry this thing out. So I'm looking forward to this great, great, great weekend and beyond, the future of Word of God Fellowship Church.
Now, that's awesome because, one thing that I've noticed, or especially like within the media the past week or two,
Sure.
They've been celebrating Tyler Perry's success,
Yes.
things of that nature. And a lot of times, we say we need more of this. We need more media. We need more schools.
Sure.
But there's a lot of that out there.
It is.
And a lot of times it's like, just go look it up, look some things up, support what's out there, because we have a lot of people doing some really special things in this world, and all we have to do is support each other.
Yeah, and I really don't want to be the best kept secret forever. You know what I'm saying? You got to get the word out about what you're doing, especially when you're in the will of God, and you want to make sure people understand that you're not doing it for show. I'm not doing it to showcase what we're doing. It's not about me. It's about making sure that people are aware that this church, this ministry is more than a church. It's a movement. And I want to make sure that people are clear on that. I'm not building a brand new church. I'm not trying to build a bigger platform. I'm not trying to build a bigger sanctuary so I can house more people. I want the people to know that we want to provide what the community needs. And that's our effort and that's our focus. And I don't want anything else about me to be, I don't want anything to taint that. That is my purpose. That is my vision. The next 20 years of my life, I'm going to dedicate to making sure that my community is touched, is impacted in a major way, because I don't want my people to go lacking for anything.
So how can people find out more about you and everything you have going on?
Listen, I'm on several social media platforms. At Mitch Summerfield is my Instagram. Mitch Sums It Up is my Twitter handle. And Mitch Summerfield on Facebook. You can search for me. All of our messages, we post clips of our messages and sermons. I'm about helping people. I'm about blessing the people who have been rejected, condemned. I really don't want people feeling like they have to give up and the church has left them. I'm called to reach the lost by any cost, okay? And that's where I'm at. There's a whole ton of lost people out there. And I don't want to only preach to people that's found. I want to preach to people that are lost, that are looking for a way and need somebody to grab them by the hand and walk them through it. I'm a young pastor. I'm a hip pastor. I'm still connected to hip hop. I'm a tattoo having, motorcycle riding guy. So I love to touch people and reach people. I wasn't always a pastor. I was in the streets heavy too. So I'm called to reach the people that are overlooked and left behind. I want to reach them. So I'm in contact with my good friend, my dear brother, Pastor Jamal Bryant, who is at New Birth. I was with him last night, as a matter of fact, and he will be with us at the Legacy Ball. He's one of the keynote speakers there. He's going to be there. He wants to really connect with the African-American Black-owned schools, and he is very avid supporter of Black education and education as a whole, but primarily for our Black youth and our Black males, making sure that they are equipped for being pillars in the community and not just being committed to prison and committed to drugs and selling drugs and all of that kind of stuff. There are people, young Black men, that we are raising up to be a great, great, great generation of leaders for tomorrow in that school. And he's partnered with us in so many different ways. He was on the Tom Joyner Morning Show this morning talking about the impact that he plans to help make for our school. So we're looking forward to a great time. He's going to be with us on November 1st as well. All
right. So, lastly, do you guys have a website for this?
Yes. So thelegacyball.org. Thelegacyball.org is the website for this event. They can go online and purchase tickets or just donate if they want to just support what we're doing with that black school. If they want to support, we're the last of the 3 black-owned private schools in the state of North Carolina, and we want to keep this one alive. It's 26 years old now. We want to keep it for 150 and beyond. So let's keep supporting thelegacyball.org.
All right. Well, lastly, I want to say I appreciate you coming by and speaking with us today.
I appreciate you having me.
Much success.
Absolutely.
I hope the event does well. I'm going to check into it as well and see what's going on.
Absolutely.
And we need more people out here making it happen.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man. I appreciate the time.
All right. No problem.
Absolutely.